The drilling rig shook violently as it hit something solid deep beneath the ice. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead despite the freezing wind that howled across the mining platform. His thick gloves made the controls harder to manage, but 30 years of drilling experience had taught him to feel vibrations through metal and bone. "What did you hit now, human?" The voice came from behind him, dripping with the same contempt Jake had heard from the Zalarian supervisors for the past 6 months. He turned to see Supervisor Kethvar approaching, his reptilian features twisted in annoyance. The alien's scaled skin gleamed blue-green under the artificial lights, and his 4 arms gestured impatiently. "Something big," Jake said simply. He had learned not to waste words with the Zalarians. They considered humans barely intelligent enough for manual labor, useful only because human bodies could handle extreme cold better than most species in the Galactic Federation. "Define big," Kethvar hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "We are here for thermal crystals, not obstacles." Jake looked at his readouts again. The thermal resonance scanner showed something massive about 60 meters down, but the density readings made no sense. "It's not rock, not metal either, something organic, but—" He paused, studying the numbers. "Sir, whatever this is, it's been preserved perfectly. The ice around it shows no decay patterns." "Impossible." Kethvar pushed Jake aside with 2 of his arms and studied the scanner himself. His vertical pupils contracted as he processed the information. "Thermal crystals form in geological layers. Organic matter would have decomposed millennia ago." "Not if it was flash frozen," Jake said quietly. "The thermal gradients show this thing was frozen extremely fast, faster than natural processes could manage." 3 more Zalarian supervisors arrived, their breath creating clouds of vapor in the Arctic air. Jake had never seen them move so quickly before. Usually they stayed in the heated command modules while humans did the physical work. Foreman Morrison, the lead supervisor Zethquan, spoke with authority that made the others step back. "You will extract this object immediately. Full excavation protocols." Jake shook his head. "Sir, with respect, full excavation could damage whatever's down there. If this is some kind of preserved specimen, we need careful thawing procedures. Gradual temperature changes." "You dare question orders?" Kethvar's scales flushed darker. "Humans do not make decisions. You operate equipment." "I operate equipment well because I understand what I'm doing," Jake replied calmly. He had dealt with angry supervisors before. "You want whatever's down there intact, right? Then we do this properly." The Zalarians exchanged looks. Jake could see their translator devices flickering as they communicated in rapid, high-pitched clicks and whistles. He caught fragments through his own translator: primitive intelligence, useful stubbornness, and minimal damage acceptable. Zethquan finally nodded. "You have 4 hours to extract the object safely. If you damage it, you will be transferred to the sulfur mines of Ketrak 4. As the supervisors retreated to their heated modules, Jake began working. He switched the drilling rig to low-power thermal mode, using carefully controlled heat to melt the ice rather than blasting through it. It was slow work, but Jake had learned patience during his years in construction before joining the off-world mining corps. The ice was older than anything he had ever seen. Layer after layer revealed ancient atmospheric conditions, frozen air bubbles containing gases that had last been free during Earth's medieval period. But this wasn't Earth ice. This was Valdris 7, a planet the Zalarians were strip mining for thermal crystals that powered their faster-than-light engines. As the thermal drill descended, Jake began to see shapes in the ice. At 50 meters, what looked like fabric appeared in the ice wall. At 55 meters, something that might have been metal gleamed dully in the drill's lights. By the time he reached 60 meters, Jake knew he had found something extraordinary. The creature was massive, nearly 3 meters tall even in what appeared to be a curled sleeping position. Its body was covered in thick fur that ranged from silver to deep black, and despite being frozen solid, every detail was perfectly preserved. The head was distinctly wolf-like, but the proportions were all wrong for any Earth canine. The skull was larger, more elongated, and the jaw structure suggested intelligence rather than simple predatory instinct. Most remarkable were the hands. The creature had hands, not paws. 5-fingered hands with opposable thumbs, currently clasped around what appeared to be a staff or scepter made of unknown metal. Jake's scanner began detecting things that made his heart race: artificial fabrics, processed metals, geometric patterns that suggested technology rather than natural formation. "Command, this is Morrison," he spoke into his comm unit. "I need to speak with Supervisor Zethquan immediately." "State your findings," came the reply through crackling static. "Sir, this isn't just a preserved animal. This is sentient, intelligent, and based on the clothing and artifacts, this was someone important." The comm channel remained silent for several minutes. Jake continued his careful excavation, using handheld thermal tools to free the ice around the creature without causing temperature shock. His experience with delicate work was paying off. Every detail of the creature's appearance became clearer as he worked. The clothing was definitely ceremonial: rich fabrics with intricate patterns, metalwork that showed advanced craftsmanship, and symbols that repeated in mathematical sequences. This wasn't just intelligent life. This was sophisticated intelligent life. "Morrison." Zethquan's voice crackled through the comm. "You will complete extraction immediately. Prepare the object for transport to the research station." "Sir, I really think we need xenobiological specialists for this, and possibly historians. The level of preservation suggests advanced technology was involved in the freezing process. Your suggestions are noted and dismissed. Complete your task." Jake sighed and continued working. The Zalarians never listened to human input, even when it made sense. They viewed humans as useful for physical labor but incapable of genuine insight. As he cleared more ice from around the creature, Jake noticed something that made him pause. The staff the creature held wasn't just decorative. It contained what appeared to be complex internal mechanisms, visible through translucent sections of the unknown metal. Energy readings from his scanner suggested the device still held a charge after all these millennia. The creature's face, now fully revealed, showed features that were both alien and strangely familiar. The wolf-like characteristics were unmistakable, but there was something in the bone structure, the way the features were arranged, that suggested nobility. This had been someone accustomed to command. Around the creature's neck hung a pendant containing a stone that Jake's scanner couldn't identify. The stone seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating an effect that was both beautiful and unsettling. Jake's comm unit buzzed again. "Morrison, what is your status?" "Almost finished with the initial extraction. I've got the specimen free from the surrounding ice, but I'm reading energy signatures from several of the artifacts. Whatever technology was used to preserve this creature, it's still active on some level." "Explain." "The staff contains some kind of power source. The pendant is generating a low-level energy field, and there are geometric patterns in the clothing that look like circuit designs." Again, silence from command. Jake could imagine the Zalarians arguing among themselves. They were xenophobic by nature, viewing other species as either inferior or threatening. The discovery of advanced technology from an unknown species would challenge their worldview significantly. "You will transport the object to Research Base 7 immediately," came the final order. "Touch nothing except what is necessary for transport." Jake carefully loaded the frozen creature onto a gravity sled, making sure to maintain the ice shell that still surrounded most of the body. As he guided the sled across the mining platform toward the research bays, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was transporting something far more important than thermal crystals. The research bay was a sterile white environment filled with analysis equipment that Jake barely understood. Zalarian scientists waited inside, their scales pale with what Jake had learned to recognize as excitement. They gestured for him to place the creature on the central examination table. "You are dismissed," one of the scientists said without looking at him. Jake hesitated. "Sir, if I might make a suggestion about the thawing process." "You might not." The scientist's tone was final. Human insights are not required. As Jake left the research bay, he glanced back through the observation window. The Zalarian scientists were already beginning their analysis, using scanning equipment that bathed the frozen creature in various colored lights. But Jake noticed something they had missed in their excitement. The creature's eyes were open beneath the ice. Not only open, but tracking the movement of the scientists around the examination table. Whatever this being was, it wasn't as unconscious as everyone assumed. Jake made a mental note to check on the research bay's progress during his next shift. 30 years of experience had taught him that the most important details were usually the ones supervisors ignored. As he walked back to the dormitory modules, Jake wondered about the creature's origins. Valdris 7 had no known history of intelligent life. The planet was supposed to be geologically young, with no fossil record of complex organisms. Yet here was evidence of not just intelligence, but advanced civilization. The wind picked up across the mining platform, carrying ice crystals that stung Jake's exposed face. In the distance, the thermal extraction towers continued their constant work, pulling crystal formations from deep beneath the planet's surface. Jake had spent most of his adult life on worlds like this, extracting resources for alien civilizations that barely acknowledged human contribution. But this discovery felt different. This felt like something that could change everything. He just hoped the Zalarians would be smart enough to handle it properly. Back in Research Bay 7, the scientists continued their scans, unaware that their subject was awake and listening to every word they spoke. The creature remained perfectly still, but behind those ancient eyes, a mind that had slept for 3,000 years was beginning to remember who she was. And more importantly, she was beginning to understand exactly who had found her. Jake Morrison had been staring at the ceiling of his dormitory for 3 hours when the emergency alarm began blaring across the mining platform. He pulled on his work clothes and rushed toward Research Bay 7, where flashing red lights indicated some kind of crisis. The scene inside the bay was chaos. 2 Zalarian scientists lay unconscious on the floor while others scrambled around monitoring equipment that sparked and smoked. The examination table where the creature had been placed was now surrounded by a dome of crackling energy that pulsed with colors Jake had never seen before. "What happened?" Jake asked the nearest conscious scientist, a female Zalarian named Dr. Vexthera, whose scales were pale with shock. "The thawing process triggered some kind of defensive mechanism," she said, her forearms working frantically at a control panel. "The energy output is beyond anything in our databases. If this continues, it could overload our entire power grid." Jake looked at the unconscious scientists. "What exactly did you do?" "Standard revival protocols. We applied gradual thermal increases while monitoring biological functions. But when core body temperature reached -40 degrees, the subject's artifacts activated simultaneously." Through the energy dome, Jake could see the creature more clearly now. The ice had completely melted away, revealing details that were even more impressive than he had imagined. The wolf-like being was definitely female, and her clothing was not just ceremonial, but functional. Complex patterns woven into the fabric seemed to pulse in rhythm with the energy field. "Have you tried reducing the thermal input?" Jake asked. Dr. Vexithara's scales flushed darker with irritation. "Of course we tried the obvious solutions. This is beyond primitive human understanding." "But it's not beyond human experience," Jake said quietly. He had seen similar energy patterns before, during his years working on geothermal projects. This isn't just technology, it's biological and technological working together. You're not dealing with a preserved specimen, you're dealing with a living being in some kind of hibernation state. Impossible. No biological system can survive 3,000 years of freezing. No biological system you know about, Jake corrected. But humans have been working with extreme preservation methods for centuries. Cryogenic suspension, medically induced hypothermia, emergency cooling protocols. What if this species developed something similar but far more advanced? Dr. Vexithara was about to dismiss him again when Supervisor Zethquan arrived with a team of security personnel. The energy dome pulsed brighter at their approach, and several pieces of equipment overloaded completely. "Status report," Zethquan commanded. "The subject is generating an energy field that appears to be protective in nature," Dr. Vexithara explained. "We cannot approach safely, and our equipment cannot penetrate the barrier for detailed analysis." "Then increase power to the containment systems." "Sir," Jake interrupted, "that might not be wise. If this is a defensive response, increasing pressure could trigger a more aggressive reaction." Zethquan's vertical pupils fixed on Jake with obvious annoyance. "Explain your reasoning, human. When humans are in emergency medical situations, our stress responses can be triggered by environmental factors. Bright lights, loud noises, unfamiliar voices. If this being is in some kind of hibernation state, our scanning equipment and thermal manipulation might be perceived as threats." "You suggest we simply wait for the subject to calm down?" "I suggest we try communication." The Zalarians exchanged looks of disbelief. Dr. Vexithara actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The subject has been unconscious for 3 millennia. Even if it could understand language, it would know nothing of modern communication protocols." "Maybe," Jake said, "but consciousness isn't always binary. Human patients in deep comas sometimes respond to familiar voices or sounds. If this being is in some kind of advanced hibernation, it might be aware of its surroundings on some level." "This is absurd," Zethquan said. "Humans lack the cognitive capacity for xenobiological analysis." As if in response to his words, the energy dome suddenly pulsed brighter and a new sound filled the room. It was low, resonant, and undeniably musical. The wolf creature was humming. The melody was complex, mathematical in its precision, but also hauntingly beautiful. Jake found himself stepping closer to the energy barrier, drawn by something in the sound that seemed almost familiar. "It's responding to our voices," he said softly. "It can hear us." The humming continued for several minutes, then shifted into what sounded like words. The language was completely alien, but the rhythm and intonation suggested questions. The creature was trying to communicate. "Dr. Vexithara," Jake said urgently, "do you have linguistic analysis equipment?" "Of course, but alien languages require months or years to decode, even with advanced computational assistance." "Not if the speaker is actively trying to communicate. If she's asking questions, she'll repeat key concepts. She'll use gestures. Humans learn new languages this way all the time." "Humans are primitive mimics," Dr. Vexithara said dismissively. "True linguistic analysis requires scientific methodology." But Jake was already moving toward the communication console. His years in space had taught him basic operation of most alien equipment, and the Zalarian systems were fairly intuitive once you understood their logic patterns. He activated the universal translator and set it to learning mode, then spoke clearly toward the energy dome. "Hello?" he said in standard Galactic, then repeated the greeting in the few other languages he knew: English, Spanish, Mandarin, and even the basic trade pidgin used in frontier mining operations. The creature's humming stopped. Through the energy barrier, Jake could see her head turn toward the sound of his voice. She spoke again, and this time Jake was certain she was asking questions. "We found you in the ice," Jake said slowly, keeping his voice calm and non-threatening. "You were frozen for a very long time. We're trying to help you." The universal translator began processing the creature's responses, building pattern maps and vocabulary databases. Jake had seen the process before, but usually it took hours for the system to develop even basic comprehension. This was different. The creature seemed to understand that the translator needed repetition and context. She began speaking in simple phrases, repeating key concepts while gesturing toward herself, the equipment, and the people around her. Within 30 minutes, the translator had developed a basic vocabulary. The creature's name was something like Yenethul, which seemed to translate roughly as ancient singer or old voice. She was asking about the passage of time, about the world outside, and about the people who had found her. "She's incredibly intelligent," Jake said to Dr. Vexithera, who was monitoring the linguistic progress with obvious amazement. "Look how quickly she's adapting to our communication methods. She's not just responding to the translator, she's actively helping it learn her language." "This is impossible," Dr. Vexithera muttered. "Linguistic adaptation of this speed requires cognitive processing power beyond most known species." Yenethul spoke again, and this time the translator provided a partial interpretation. "Time. Long sleep. Danger past. Safe. To wake." Jake looked at the energy dome, which had begun to dim as the conversation continued. "I think she's asking if it's safe to come out of hibernation. The energy field might be some kind of protective stasis system." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because that's what I would do. If I had to sleep for a long time in a dangerous situation, I'd want a way to monitor the environment before fully waking up." Jake spoke toward the energy dome again. "The danger you were hiding from is gone. It's been 3,000 years. We found you by accident while mining for crystals. We want to help you, but we need to understand your technology so we don't hurt you accidentally." Yenethul responded with a long, complex statement. The translator struggled with most of it, but key concepts came through. Empire. Ended. Wolves. Scattered. Crystal sleep. Safe awakening. Trust? "She's talking about an empire," Jake said excitedly. "And crystal sleep, that's probably how the hibernation system works. It's connected to the thermal crystals in the planet." Dr. Vexithera was reviewing the linguistic data on her screens. "The vocabulary suggests an advanced technological civilization, references to stellar navigation, quantum manipulation, biological engineering." The energy dome continued to fade as Yenethul spoke more freely. Jake could see more details of her appearance now. She was magnificent, easily the size of a large human male, but with grace and dignity that spoke of noble bearing. Her fur was a complex pattern of silver and black that seemed to shift in the light, and her eyes held intelligence that was both alien and remarkably familiar. "She's deciding whether to trust us," Jake realized. "The energy field is under her conscious control. She could have dropped it at any time." Zethquan, who had been silent during the communication attempts, finally spoke. "Ask her about her technology. We need to understand the power source of her preservation system." Jake shook his head. "Sir, with respect, that's not the right approach. She just woke up from a 3,000-year sleep to find her civilization gone and strangers surrounding her. The last thing she needs is an interrogation about technology." "The human is correct," Dr. Vexithera said quietly. "Psychological trauma from temporal displacement could be severe. We should focus on establishing trust before requesting information." Yenethul spoke again, and this time the translation was clearer. "Small ones, different minds, not like the cold thinkers. Why do you show kindness?" Jake realized she was asking about him specifically. "I think she's asking why humans are treating her differently than the Zalarians." "Different how?" Zethquan demanded. "Like she's a person instead of a specimen." The energy dome flickered and suddenly disappeared entirely. Yenethul sat up on the examination table, moving with careful, controlled grace. She was even more impressive awake. Her presence filled the room in a way that made everyone step back instinctively. She spoke directly to Jake, her voice deep and musical. You wake me gently. You ask questions with respect. Your mind touches mine with curiosity, not hunger. Are all of your pack this way? Jake found himself answering honestly. Some are. Others aren't. Humans are complicated. Yenethul's lips curved in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth that were clearly designed for more than just meat. Complicated minds make the best allies and the worst enemies. I have not heard such honesty in many centuries. Dr. Vexithara approached slowly, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. You speak of centuries as if you remember them. How long were you conscious during your hibernation? Time moves differently in crystal sleep, Yenethul replied. I dreamed, but the dreams were also watching. I felt the world change around me. I heard the voices of those who passed by my resting place. Heard them how? Jake asked. Yenethul touched the pendant at her throat. The song of the deep crystal. It carries all vibrations, all voices, all thoughts of those who come near. I have been listening to your people for many seasons of the star above. Jake felt a chill of realization. You've been studying us, learning about us while we thought you were unconscious. The human sees clearly, Yenethul said approvingly. Yes, I have watched your minds work. I have heard your frustrations with the cold thinkers who command you. I have seen your skill with tools and your gentleness with delicate tasks. She stood up from the examination table, her full height making her tower over everyone in the room. I have decided you are worthy of the truth about what sleeps beneath this world. The implication hung in the air like a charged storm. There was more than one preserved being on Valdris 7th. And humanity had just made first contact with someone who might hold the key to discoveries that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. 3 days after Yenethul's awakening, Jake Morrison found himself in the strangest situation of his 30-year career. He was sitting across from an ancient alien Empress in what had once been Research Bay 7, now hastily converted into diplomatic quarters, while Zalarian administrators argued in increasingly shrill voices about jurisdiction and protocol. Yenethul listened to their debate with the patience of someone who had observed political maneuvering for centuries. Her massive frame was relaxed in the reinforced chair they had provided, but Jake could see the intelligence in her eyes as she processed every nuance of the Zalarian hierarchy. Your supervisors fear me, she said quietly, speaking directly to Jake while the Zalarians continued their argument. But not for the reasons they should. What should they be afraid of? Jake asked. Knowledge? Yenethul's lips curved in that alien smile. I remember when their ancestors first achieved spaceflight, primitive, aggressive, with more ambition than wisdom. Some things do not change. Supervisor Zethquan noticed their conversation and approached with obvious irritation. The subject will address all communications through proper diplomatic channels. Personal conversations are not authorized. Her name is Yenethul, Jake said firmly, and she's not a subject. She's the leader of a civilization. A dead civilization, Zethquan corrected. Her species is extinct. She has no authority here. Yenethul stood gracefully, her full height making Zethquan step back involuntarily. When she spoke, her voice carried undertones that seemed to resonate through the metal floor of the research bay. Dead? She said, amusement clear in her tone. Supervisor Zethquan of the 4th Expansion Fleet, son of the mining guild Kethvar. Your ancestors learned caution when they last encountered my people. Perhaps that lesson needs refreshing. Zethquan's scales went pale. You cannot know that information. I know many things. I know that Valdris 7 contains more than thermal crystals. I know that your mining operations have been systematically avoiding the southern continent. And I know why. She gestured toward the observation window that showed the vast mining complex stretching across the frozen landscape. You feel them, don't you? The deep songs that make your equipment malfunction near the polar range. The gravitational anomalies that disrupt your transport schedules. The dreams that disturb your sleep cycles when you work too close to the ice caverns. Dr. Vexathara, who had been monitoring their conversation from her workstation, looked up sharply. You're describing the anomalous readings from mining Sector 12. Our geological surveys show massive structures beneath the ice, but we assumed they were natural formations. Not natural, Yenethul said. Created. My people built cities in the deep ice of many worlds. Valdris VII was one of our greatest achievements. But the planet shows no signs of advanced civilization, Dr. Vexathara protested. Our orbital scans revealed no artificial structures, no technology signatures. Yenethul touched the pendant at her throat, and suddenly the room's displays lit up with images that made everyone stop arguing. Holographic projections showed Valdris VII as it had been 3,000 years ago, a world of towering crystalline cities that rose from ice plains like frozen symphonies, with transport networks that moved through the planet's core using principles the Zalarians couldn't identify. We built deep, not high, Yenethul explained. Surface structures were temporary. True civilization grows toward the heart of the world, where the crystal songs are strongest. Jake studied the projections with growing excitement. This is why our thermal extraction has been so efficient here. We're not just mining natural crystal formations. We're accessing the remains of your power grid. The human understands, Yenethul said approvingly. Your species has an intuitive grasp of energy flow that more advanced civilizations often lose. You work with the crystals rather than simply taking from them. Zethquan's confusion was evident in his body language. If such cities existed, where are the inhabitants? Where are the ruins? Sleeping, Yenethul said simply. When the great darkness came, when the Star-Eaters moved through this region of space, my people chose preservation over flight. We entered crystal sleep, waiting for the danger to pass. Star-Eaters? Dr. Vexathara's scales paled. You mean the Devourers? But that was over 3,000 years ago. They were destroyed in the First Coalition War. Destroyed? Yenethul's laugh was like wind chimes in a storm. Child, the Devourers cannot be destroyed. They can only be turned aside. My people helped design the weapons that sent them into hibernation in the deep void between galaxies. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. You're saying your people were part of the First Coalition. You helped save the galaxy from the Devourers. We were the First Coalition, Yenethul corrected. The younger races provided numbers and resources, but the strategy, the technology, the sacrifice, that came from the elder peoples, the wolves of the deep crystal, the builders of the Starforge, the singers of the quantum wind. She gestured to the holographic displays, and the images shifted to show massive space battles between fleets of ships that looked more like living creatures than machines. Jake could see vessels that resembled wolves, whales, and other organic forms. But their scale was breathtaking. Ships the size of moons, space stations that looked like frozen forests, weapons that bent space itself. The war lasted 200 years, Yenethul continued. We won, but the cost was enormous. Most of the elder peoples chose to enter the long sleep rather than try to rebuild in a galaxy scarred by the conflict. We left caretaker systems to wake us when the younger races had matured enough to need our guidance again. Caretaker systems? Zethquan asked. Like me. Yenethul smiled. I was chosen to wake first, to assess whether the galaxy was ready for the return of the elder peoples. I have been observing, learning, waiting for the right moment to reveal myself. Jake felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. The thermal crystal mining, You let us find you. This wasn't an accident. Very good. The humans seized the deep currents. Yenethul's approval was evident. Your species fascinates me. In 3,000 years, most races either become rigid and bureaucratic like the Zilarians, or they destroy themselves through warfare. But humans adapt. You take the worst conditions and find ways not just to survive, but to thrive. We're stubborn, Jake said with a grin. You're resilient. There is a difference. Stubbornness is inflexible. Resilience bends, but does not break. Dr. Vexthera had been analyzing the holographic data while they talked. The technology shown here is beyond anything in our current databases. The energy manipulation alone represents theoretical advances we haven't achieved. Because you think in straight lines, Yenethul said gently. Crystal technology requires circular thinking, patience, understanding that power grows from harmony, not dominance. She turned to Jake. This is why I chose to reveal myself to your foreman rather than your supervisors. Humans understand working with materials instead of forcing them. You feel the rhythm of machines, the personality of tools. Some of us do, Jake admitted, but not all humans are miners or engineers. No, but all humans are builders in some way. You cannot help yourselves. Give a human any environment and they will try to improve it, modify it, make it more suitable for life. This is why I believe your species may be ready for the next step. What next step? Zethquan demanded. Yenethul's expression became serious. The Devourers were not destroyed. They were sent into hibernation in the space between galaxies. But hibernation, even for cosmic parasites, does not last forever. They will return within the next 1,000 years, probably sooner. And when they do? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. The younger races will need the knowledge and technology of the elder peoples to survive. But we will not simply give you advanced weapons to repeat the mistakes of the past. You must prove yourselves worthy of the partnership. She gestured to the mining platform visible through the observation windows. This facility represents exactly the kind of cooperation that will be necessary. Humans providing practical skills and intuitive understanding while the Zilarians contribute organizational structure and resource management. You're suggesting an alliance, Dr. Vexithara said slowly. I'm suggesting evolution. The time of single-species civilizations is ending. The challenges ahead will require the combined strengths of many peoples. Jake looked around the room at the mixture of hope and apprehension on everyone's faces. What would this partnership look like? It begins here, on Valdris the 7th. The awakening of my people requires precise coordination. Human instincts for working with complex systems, Zilarian administrative efficiency, and my knowledge of the awakening protocols. Yenethul touched her pendant again, and the room's displays showed detailed schematics of the underground cities. There are 12,000 of my people in crystal sleep beneath this planet. Each awakening must be carefully managed to prevent system shock. The process will take months, possibly years. 12,000, Jake breathed. An entire civilization. One of many. Valdris 7 is only the first. When my people are fully awakened, we will begin the process of reviving other elder people civilizations. The builders, the singers, the deep swimmers, all those who chose preservation over extinction. Supervisor Zethquan's scales had been cycling through colors as he processed the implications. The Galactic Federation Council will need to be informed. This changes all political and economic structures. The Galactic Federation Council, Yenethul said with amusement, was created using organizational principles my people taught your ancestors. They will adapt or be replaced by those who can. She turned back to Jake. But first, Foreman Morrison, I need your help with something more immediate. Anything. The awakening process requires someone who understands both the technical requirements and the emotional needs of people emerging from long sleep. Someone with patience, intuition, and the ability to communicate across species barriers. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You want me to help wake up 12,000 ancient alien emperors and empresses? I want you to help welcome them home, Yenethul corrected. And in doing so, help humanity take its place as a full partner in the community of intelligent species. She stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the mining platform where human and Zalarian workers continued their tasks, unaware that everything was about to change. The galaxy is larger and more dangerous than most races realize, she said quietly. But it is also more wonderful. The partnership that begins here will determine whether the younger races survive what is coming. Jake joined her at the window. No pressure, then. Yenethul's laugh was like music. Pressure makes crystals, Foreman Morrison, and crystals sing songs that last forever. As if in response to her words, a deep harmonic vibration began to resonate through the mining platform. Equipment throughout the facility started humming in harmony, and far below in the deep ice, ancient systems that had slept for 3 millennia began to wake up. The age of the elder peoples was beginning again, and humanity would be part of it.